filmed because I'm already late. I'm trying to upload it tonight before midnight. It's been so loud in the hallway because it's Saturday night. My fiance is sick and he's been coughing. My phone ran out of storage, so I had to go and do extra stuff for that. And then at the very beginning of this, I couldn't even get the microphone audio to work. So at this point, I'm just happy to be here. I'm hoping nothing fucks up. If it does, you guys just make it a 5-minute video because I don't know what to do. But I was telling people, or not people, I was telling myself in the other video that I wanted to start doing more red lips. Like, I want it to be my signature now because I feel so insecure sometimes with not having any hair, and then my hair is I got thick black hair. And so sometimes I'm just like, oh, I need something else to like have people look at. And red lips, the lipstick that I use is called Fab Lips. I don't know if this is like a small business or whatever, but I got it from my mom. So look up Fab Lips red lipstick if you want this. It's really good. I also use a brown lip liner because red lips without a liner, I don't think it can look crazy depending on your skin tone. So this is what we're working with. Today I'm going to be reading out of a book about psychology. If you don't know, I'm a psychology major. I want to work with people in a counseling manner. And so it was a great career for me and it taught me a lot, and I wanted to just have something that I could go back to read to just stay refreshed while I'm taking a break from school these next few years to figure out my life and where I'm going, where I want to land. Yeah, it's been a lot. Undergrad was a lot with COVID, but I truly do love just helping people, and the way that I want to do it is through therapy or counseling or just being there for the people that are in my near vicinity in an emotionally mature way. But that also requires me to like be emotionally mature and constantly in a state of reflection for how I treat the people around me and how I live my own life. And I think that's why I'm not like super in a rush to get to the point where I get my master's or whatever to do that work. It's because I'm still working on myself, and I know that if I were to go to grad school right now, I still have just a lot of things that I need to work on, like discipline and stuff. It just wouldn't make sense. It would be a waste of money, it would be a waste of time, and I want to be my best self, and I'm working to be my best self, and I'm already feeling better every day, and it's just a process. But I do have a timeline in my head, which is why like just making sure that I'm in a good spot is important to me before I even enter any type of field where I'm directly responsible for, not even directly responsible, but like remotely responsible for the outcomes of other people. My fiance is so sick, child. I'm really worried about that man. I think he has COVID. Anyways, this is a psychology book that I got at Five Below. I can't tell if people are playing music in the background, but I think they are. And this book has a lot of chapters. And so today we're going to be reading into the social psychology chapter We're going to be reading into the social psychology chapter, and I'll be doing it cupped to the best of my ability. Okay. The first major concern of those who called themselves social psychologists was the study of attitudes. In the early 1920s, U.S. psychologists were increasingly keen to applying psychological knowledge to the social problems such as racism and break down the communications in families. Early psychologists chose to approach these problems using the concept of attitudes. Sorry, it's kind of dark in here and I'm a little bit far away. Okay. Attitudes have been of studies of attitude followed, as people have been exposed to attitude research and as prejudice and bias towards people of different racial groups has become less and less socially acceptable and often illegal. There is a genuine worry that when people report their attitudes they are giving, that when people report their attitudes they are giving socially acceptable responses rather than saying what they genuinely think or feel. For these researching bias and prejudice in society, there is a serious flaw. These studies might not be valid, and therefore the conclusion drawn from them are false. The implicit association test was developed to covertly measure attitudes to different social groups. The test was based on the idea that we have unconscious attitudes, that is, attitudes we are not aware of, that shape our behavior. In the IAT, participants are asked to respond to pairs of shapes, to pairs of concepts. We can respond more quickly to pairs of concepts that we closely associate together rather than pairs of concepts that we do not closely associate together. For example, one concept may be good, which can be directly associated with joy or love or peace. The conceptuality opposite, bad, can be elicited with items such as agony, terrible, and hurt. In the study of racial prejudice, these items are paired with faces of black or white people. Someone who is prejudiced against black people responds more slowly when a black face is present along with good items. By measuring reaction times to these different pairs of concepts, the authors of the IAT believe they found a way of measuring prejudice or bias that is not affected by social desirability. Critics argue that it has not been empirically demonstrated that these scores are valid, nor is there evidence that explorer responses are linked to actual racist behavior. This is a highly contentious area. After World War II, psychologists engaged in a great deal of theoretical reflection and empirical research to try to understand and explain the causes of the conflict, especially the Holocaust, the systematic murder of at least 6 billion European Jews. Milgram was one of these social psychologists. When Ekman was tried in Jerusalem in 1961 for his role in the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people, Milgram was impressed by the philosopher Hannah Arendt's observation that Ekman was not obviously the bloodthirsty anti-Semitic monster that the prosecution described. No doubt his actions were bloodthirsty, monstrous, and anti-Semitic, but Ekman came across as a petty bureaucrat who was more concerned with showing how efficient he was to his bosses. She referred to the benignity of evil to describe how the actions of people like Ekman, which are essentially thoughtless, lazy, and rather self-centered, can lead to unspeakable crimes. Milgram took this observation to the laboratory and devised one of the most famous psychology experiments. Milgram set up a series of experiments to test her contention that ordinary people could commit terrible crimes in the name of complying with authority. In these tests, genuine participants were tricked into believing they were experimenters who were testing the memory of another participant identified as the learner. As experimenters, they were asked to administer electric shocks to the learner. These shocks gradually increased in intensity, or so the participants believed, and as the shocks were administered, the learner, who was acting the part and who was not visible to the participant, began to cry out as if in pain. It was clear that the experimenters were uncomfortable about continuing to administer shocks beyond the pain threshold. They were not interested or bullied into doing argued that this demonstrated the power of compliance with authority. Milgram and the experts he consulted before the experiment began expected the experimenters to abandon the experiment after administering a few shocks. Most psychologists thought the experimenters would refuse to go on once it became apparent that the learner was in great pain. In the experiment, 65% of the participants continued to administer shocks at the highest intensity. Critics of Milgram's experiment argued that it was unethical to put participants in the position where they thought they were inflicting serious injury on other people. The Stanford prison experiment. The powerful effect on people who are put in positions of power was made apparent in the work of Philip. In his Stanford prison experiment, the coordinator of the psychology department of Stanford University became the prison. Students were randomly assigned the role of prison guard or prisoner, with no explicit instructions other than to keep order in the prison. The guards took their assigned role to extremes and reacted with increasing authoritarianism, while the prisoners questioned their behavior. Guards punished prisoners for offenses by making them do push-ups and standing on their backs. On the second day, the prisoners rebelled, and the guards responded with extreme measures. The ringleader was placed in solitary confinement, and the other participants were stripped naked. Some prisoners were given special treatment, and others punished, and a few even began to suffer from mental breakdowns. The guards, so immersed in the experiment, but refused to believe that the symptoms were real. The experiment was scheduled to run for 2 weeks, but he decided to end early with the 6th day when it became clear that the prisoners were suffering physical distress and even mental trauma. Group performance. Dating back to the 1890s, studies have shown that the presence of a co-star can affect an actor's performance. Until the 1960s, what was less well understood was how a passive audience can affect performance. Then, Robert conducted a series of experiments in which he varied the difficulty of a task and the presence or the absence of an audience. It showed that when individuals performed tasks that were straightforward and well practiced, dominant responses, their performance improved when other people were present. When the task was difficult, non-dominant, the presence of other people adversely affected their performance. He inferred from this that we are genetically pre-programmed to become more aroused in the presence of others in order to prepare us to fight or flight. For easy tasks, this readiness is to respond with enhanced performance. In difficult tasks, however, it is inferred with the calm and reflective state needed to deal with complexity. Oh my god. Do groups make better or worse decisions than individuals? In the 1960s, an MIT student, James Stoner, discovered that groups make more risky decisions than individuals, contrary to current received wisdom at the time. The variety of explanations were put forward. Perhaps group membership allowed one to choose potentially dangerous options, because if something did go wrong, then the responsibility could be shared. Roger Brown suggested that it was because American culture valued people who took risky decisions. And when people were put in a group, they discovered that they were actually quite cautious and thus advocated taking more risks to enhance the feeling of self-worth. Follow-up work showed that groups were not more inherently riskier than individuals, but that putting people into groups polarized their decision-making. So individuals cautious when they are put with others of the same mindset. The quality of decision-making and risk-taking was researched further by Irving Janus, who reconstructed the process that had occurred in a number of cases where very poor governmental decisions had been made, such as the U.S. government's support for the Bay of Pigs invasion of Cuba. Janus argued that these poor decisions had been made because the decision-making group had been subject to the process he called groupthink, which he defined as a deterioration of mental efficacy, reality testing, and moral judgment that results from in-group pressures. Musef argued that the basis of intergroup conflict wasn't fear of people who were different because of their race, religion, or ethnicity, but because different groups were in competition for scarce resources such as jobs, access to education, and healthcare services. Robert's cave field study showed that competition for scarce resources did indeed produce intergroup hostility. Later researchers discovered that hostility could be produced without any explicit competition. It was carried, a series of experiments were carried out, in which he documented that simply categorizing school boys into two groups on a flimsy pretext of which modern artists they preferred was enough to result in positive bias towards an in-group and negative bias towards an out-group. He then went to develop the social identity theory, which he argues that all of us have the basic motivation to categorize the social world in terms of group membership, and that group membership can carry positive or negative values. If we compare our own membership of different groups, the overall, we belong to low group values, and we are motivated to change the value of those groups. As with the civil rights movement, reformers took part in the Black is Beautiful campaign to raise awareness of the value of black skin.